Welcome back to today's program. As more and more experts are beginning to acknowledge, the meat industry is taking a severe toll on Earth through our economy, the climate and ultimately our own lives. Approximately 70% of all antibiotics sold in the US are fed to ostensibly healthy animals in medicated feed, increasing the prevalence of antibiotic-resistant forms of Salmonella, E. coli and Staphylococcus infections. Human health is paying a hefty price for meat, as highlighted by Ezra Klein in this article published by the Washington Post.
Food animal production accounts for 70% of the antibiotics used in the United States. That doesn't even include the antibiotics used for animals that actually get sick. The heavy reliance on routine antibiotic use is a byproduct of the way we raise animals for food, packed into dim and dirty enclosures where they live amid their own filth, eat food that they haven't evolved to digest, and are pretty much stacked atop one another. When you give antibiotics to animals meant to become food, however, you're ensuring that antibiotics end up in the food in low but constant doses. A 2003 World Health Organization study in PDF put it pretty starkly. There is clear evidence of the human health consequences from agricultural use of antibiotics, including infections that would not have otherwise occurred, increased frequency of treatment failures, in some cases death, and increased severity of infections. There's also the argument that the pennies we're saving on each burger are being spent in our hospitals. A 2005 study out of Tufts University estimated that antibiotic-resistant infections add $50 billion to the annual cost of American health care.
In an in-depth approach for health policy, the world's leading medical journal, The Lancet, published a study that linked climate change effects with global health. In it was a clear recommendation to address levels of meat consumption.
Increasing demand for foods such as meat and dairy, particularly among urban middle classes, has serious ramifications for climate change. Livestock production, including transport of livestock and feed, accounts for nearly 80% of the agricultural sector's greenhouse gas emissions. The short-term warming resulting from these emissions, dominated by methane, which over 10 to 20 years is 2 orders of magnitude more powerful in its greenhouse effect than is CO2, is substantial. Reduced consumption of meat from ruminant animals, major sources of methane, especially in today's high-income countries, could therefore be an important first quick gain step in mitigating climate change and would reduce the risks of some cancers and obesity.
Adding to a heated world is the collective fever of the swine flu, the current deadly pandemic that has claimed well over 4,500 lives in official counts and infected millions in rates that are too fast to follow. Swine flu, like global warming, has undisputed roots in the livestock industry. Animal farms today increase viruses' chance to evolve, mutate and spread. Laurie Garrett is the Senior Fellow for Global Health at the Council of Foreign Relations and a Pulitzer Prize-winning writer. As the author of The Coming Plague, Newly Emerging Diseases in a World Out of Balance, she wrote about the way to stop pandemics in Newsweek magazine soon after the first outbreak in spring 2009.
A wiser set of pig-related actions would turn to the strange ecology we have created to feed meat to our massive human population. It is a strange world wherein billions of animals are concentrated into tiny spaces. Breeding stock is flown to production sites all over the world, and poorly paid migrant workers are exposed to infected animals. And it's going to get much worse. In 1983, the world consumed 152 million tons of meat a year. By 1997, consumption was up to 233 million tons, and the United Nations Food and Agriculture Organization estimates that by 2020, world consumption could top 386 million tons of pork, chicken, beef, and farmed fish. This is the ecology that, in the cases of pigs and chickens, is breeding influenza. It is an ecology that promotes viral evolution. And if we don't do something about it, this ecology will one day spawn a severe pandemic that will dwarf that of 1918.
Today's program looked at the incredibly high cost of meat production, in terms of our health, the environment, our co-inhabitants the animals, and ultimately our human dignity. Perhaps only one question remains. If the only way to save ourselves, either from a climate catastrophe or an unprecedented plague, was to shift to a vegan diet, what choice would you make? Thank you for joining us for today's programme, reviewing published discussions on the high cost of meat in a heated world. Coming up next is Words of Wisdom after noteworthy news, here on Supreme Master Television.
For more details, please visit www.suprememastertv.com/EE.